of you know, for the last few weeks, we've partnered with churches all across the world in this initiative called One Prayer. I know last week we had Craig Rochelle give a message, and I sat back there with goosebumps on my arms when it came time to pray, because I kept thinking, how cool is this, that we here in Schoolcraft are united with people all across the world praying the same prayer. It was very cool. Well, today what we're going to be talking about, actually our speaker is John Burke. John Burke is the executive and founding pastor of Gateway Church in Austin, Texas. He and his wife Kathy founded it together in 1998, with just a handful of people, and now they're up to over 5,000 people in attendance. John Burke was also the author of the book No Perfect People Allowed, which we went through that series in the fall. And his church is all about creating a come as you are culture. So today we're going to hear from John, and God is for you.
Hey, I'm John Burke, pastor of Gateway Church, and it's so great to be able to speak to you today. I'm here in Austin, Texas, the live music capital of the world. Actually, we don't really know if we're the live music capital or not. We just say that because, hey, it's Texas. Everything in Texas is supposed to be bigger and better. Actually, Austin is not really like Texas because it draws people from all over the country into the high-tech industry. And this is where they come. This is where they come to party, to hang out, to hook up. You know, this is really where probably most Christians would think people come who are farthest from God.
Do you feel comfortable going into most of the bars on the street here?
Most of the bars I do. I mean, there's not a problem.
Sure. Why not? How about bars on 6th Street? Yeah, all bars. Yeah, I don't see why not.
They might think this is where God tends to stay away, that he's farthest from here.
Do you guys feel equally comfortable walking into a church?
I don't go to church very often.
No, not any church.
But you know, the more that I read and study the scriptures, the more I realize that God is for these people, and he wants them to know that.
Let me ask you another question. Do you think God is for you or against you?
That's a tough one. I mean, first of all, you're assuming that I believe in God.
Indifferent. Well, I say that, I don't think you can really answer that question. I think there's kind of a mixed group.
I wouldn't say that God is for or against me or any other individual. I think that, if there is a God, he or she or it has its own plan that doesn't quite fit that description.
You know, when I look at the life of Jesus, I start to think, if he were alive today, this might just be the place that you would find him the most, right? With the place where the wildest, most immoral people are. And when I look at his life, I realize they would probably really like him and end up hanging out with him and even following him. And then I start to think, if he were to bring his friends, his followers to your church or mine, knowing that would be kind of messy, a little bit confusing, what kind of reception would they get? What kind of message would they get? Would they get the message, God is for you?
You know, over the last 10 years, I've interacted with a lot of people like the ones we just met. In fact, our church is made up mostly of people like that, who on the outside seem to be very far from God, but in reality, God was not very far from them. He was right there with them on 6th Street, or where they do life, drawing them to himself, because God is for them. God is a God of mercy. And he wants people to know that he is for them, not against them. But I'm convinced for that to happen, those of us who make up his church, we're going to have to be willing to let things get a little messy. You think about it this way. If you invite the average person under the age of 45 to come to your church to explore faith or come hang out with you and your Christian friends, more than likely, the average person, 1 out of 3, will have had an abortion or been involved in one. 1 out of 4 of the women that you meet will have been sexually molested, which creates all kinds of struggles. 1 out of 2 people will have lived together before marriage, and have been sexually active and been involved in pornography or sexual addictions or affairs. 1 out of 5 people you meet will struggle with some kind of substance abuse, to drugs or alcohol. 1 out of 5 people smoke. 1 out of 2 marriages fail. You just do the math, and you realize everybody is struggling with something. It's a very broken, messy world that we live in. So how does any of that change? Well, you know, Paul wrote to a very messy church in the city of Corinth, which was a city that was filled with substance abuse and wild partying, sexual struggles, homosexuality, even relativism. Here's what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 3. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor, for we are God's co-workers. Now, do you see what this says? This says God causes the growth. See, that's not your responsibility or my responsibility. We can't go and change people or fix people or grow people. Only God can cause the growth in us or them. God causes the growth. But notice, too, we do have a responsibility as His co-workers. And our responsibility is the soil. Creating the soil or the right environment or culture where God can cause the growth, where growth best happens. Now, the truth is there's good soil and there's bad soil. You know, the Bible records that Jesus had many interactions with the religious leaders of His day. And what's interesting is that Jesus reserved some of His harshest words, not for the drunkard or the prostitute or the immoral person, but for the religious leaders. And why? Well, I think it's because they were creating bad soil. They were keeping people from growing. You know, they had the very derogatory description of Jesus, the religious leaders. They called Him the friend of sinners. Now, it's odd if you think about it. The moral phallics of Jesus' day were attracted to Him. Somehow He was life-giving to them. They somehow got the message from Jesus, God is for you, not against you. And yet, the religious people, the people who seemingly had it all together, were repelled by Jesus. They couldn't stand Him. You know, the biggest problem Jesus had with the religious people of His day was their pretense, their inauthenticity between God and other people. So I want to talk about losing this need to pretend so that we can create the soil or the culture, the environment where all of us, where all people can really grow. And you know, if the truth be known, that's what we all want, isn't it? To come to a place where we can just be ourselves, warts and all, and experience love from others, and get the support so that we can walk together with God toward becoming more and more of what God intended us to be. And you know what? That's what the whole world longs for as well. But first we have to lose the religious pretense, and we have to gain a heart of mercy. But that gets messy. You know, Jesus' ministry was messy, right? Isn't that what the religious leaders of His day had such a problem with? How messy His ministry was? In fact, they complained about it, right? It's recorded in Matthew chapter 9. It says, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked Jesus' disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Okay, now you can't lose the irony of what Jesus is saying here. Who were the healthy, righteous people that He was talking to here? They were the Pharisees, the very people who would crucify Him. See, this is Bible sarcasm. They weren't healthy, they were hiding. They weren't righteous, they were playing a religious game. See, Jesus hung out with the ethically corrupt tax collectors, former prostitutes, partying sinners, messy people. You know, the Samaritan woman who had racked up 5 divorces and was now living with a 6th man. And he hung out with these people, and it got talked about and written about. Why did he hang out with them?